Good evening. This is State of the Arts NYC, and this is your host, Savona Bailey-McClain. Tonight, we have joining us Kate Hopkins and Chris Boynton, who will talk to us about their lighting and design business, Art and Guile. So welcome, Kate and Chris. How are you?
Very good.
Yeah, very good. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you. So I want to say again to our guests, we are so happy to be in our new studio at Brick Media. Isn't it a nice studio?
It's very nice, yes.
I like it. It really feels great. It's great equipment. We were having fun taking some pictures, doing that social media thing. So now we're going to talk about this husband and wife duo who are based right here in Brooklyn. So for the benefit of our guests, Kate and Chris are both natives from Colorado, correct?
Yes.
That's right, yeah.
And I like this part. They met in high school. You don't hear these kind of stories anymore. They met in high school, graduated, and then kind of separated and reconnected back in New York City in 2009. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
And then after they reconnected, they started working together. So Kate is an artist, and Chris is a filmmaker, and he does some 3D modeling. So we're going to kick off by talking a little bit about your individual practices and then how the two of you got together. So, Kate, tell us a little bit about your artistic practice.
Great. Well, it was a little all over the board of a background in printmaking, and did transitioned into some painting, and then also from there into some installation sculptural pieces that were more technical in their scope. And so Chris and I actually started working together on some of these larger scale installations that I had. And that's where we actually really discovered that we had an interest of working together as well.
Okay.
So we had a nice sort of collaborative spirit in working on these creative projects. So that's how we kind of started working together on these creative things.
All right. And then with Chris, now your background is more in film, correct?
I got a bachelor's degree in film production.
Go ahead.
And moved to New York to pursue that, and that lasted a few years, and then I realized that's not what I wanted to do anymore.
All right. So, but that's like your training. It's in
Yes.
filmmaking?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then the two of you decided to come together in what year?
Well, we reconnected in 2008.
Yeah.
Or 2009.
And reconnecting on the business end of things, probably it was actually several years that we just discovered a mutual love for design, and explored that world and started learning about the world of design in New York together for several years, starting in 2011, 12, and just kind of immersing ourselves in that world, just as
kind of
enjoying it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, also design has changed in New York City for the last, I would say, 7-8 years approximately. And a lot of people may not even remember how, that was during the beginning of the mayoral election before de Blasio became mayor. And his competitor, Christine Quinn, was the one who was trying to really kick off NYC by Design. And I can't forget it because I was invited to the press conference that she gave in the middle of Times Square. And I brought in all of these artists, and they were like so impressed. I brought all these artists, and she was really talking about it. And it was really a positive thing because in the past, when you thought of design, you thought of only interior design for those who were in the industry only. You never saw it as a participatory experience. And then it kind of exploded with the city's New York City Economic Development Corporation, the city's tourism board, and then all of a sudden May became Design Month, and you have wanted design, and you have collective design. I've actually been to their fair twice and interviewed a lot of their designers, and then you have the big one at Jacob Javits Center, and then you have the one out in Sunset Park. You have so many designs. It's like you got to get to about 5 of them. And then that way you get to learn what's going on. So tell us your experience, because you participated together in Wanted Design. How was that experience for the two of you?
It was amazing.
Yeah,
it was great.
It's an amazing. It's a very international fair among the ones in the city. So it's really exciting to see designers from all over the world come together. And like you say, it's an exciting part of the city now that New York has become a center for design as well, and that we have such an international draw now as well to come and participate in New York Designs Week. So,
well, Chris, why don't you tell us, how did the two of you got into Wanted Design? Was there some sort of process?
Well, we actually launched when we started the company. We did ICFF was actually our first trade show.
Okay.
And we just jumped into the deep end with that.
That's a big one too.
It is a big one.
And that was our experience.
For our first year.
Was for our first year. It was a good show, but it was huge, and it was hard to connect with people, and we connected with a couple of other designers that we were fans of. But it was a big kind of overwhelming experience for us, and so we decided the following year we wanted to not do ICFF and try something
a little smaller,
different, and Wanted was
more
at
intimate,
the top of our list. And they have the Launchpad program, which is for new up-and-coming designers, and so we applied to that, and we were thrilled that we got in.
Yeah, you know what? I have to admit, of all the design fairs, it's Collective and Wanted that I need to get to the most. Collective because it's stunningly beautiful. The whole team, I mean, it is stunningly beautiful. And then for a small fair too, because he purposely, Peter, he wants it to be intimate. He doesn't want it to be like a regular art fair where it's so big you feel like you're overwhelmed. And then Wanted Design, because I believe they bring the most eclectic group of people together. So you're always surprised by all the people that they curate for their particular fair. So I have to admit, you picked a good one.
Well, before we started the business for several years, we were, ruminating on what kind of a collaborative, creative endeavor we could undertake to earn a living, and we were researching the design world, and so we went to for 3 or 4 years we went to the different shows, ICFF and Wanted, just to walk around, and just to research the design world in New York, and Collective and Wanted were definitely the ones we enjoyed the most.
I also like Salon Art and Design, too. That's big over at the Park Avenue Armory. And when I am starting to I know people complain about all of these fairs and feel that they're so impersonal and you don't get to meet nobody. I don't know about them. But every time I go to a fair, I'm seeing somebody I know. Hi, how you doing over there? Savona, hey, stop by. Or hugs, like I saw Sean Kelly, who has, you know, his art gallery, he tapped me on the shoulder to give me a hug, or the funniest, if he heard me now, he would be like cracking up because our birthdays are like a couple of days apart. Fernando Mastriangelo, he's a designer.
Oh, sure.
And we were sitting next to each other at the Salon Art and Design Fair. And he was saying, would you like some champagne? And I was like, sure. So he went and got a glass, and we're sitting there. And we're talking. He's like, Savona, you know, I'm supposed to be on your show. And I'm like, who are you? He says, it's me. Don't you remember me? I had to think about it for a while.
I've seen so many faces.
I mean, it was so many people. I was like, who is this?
Absolutely.
And now we're really good friends. I got to call him up. Our birthdays are coming up in October, and we be laughing and having a great old time. But I do find that, you know, you do see a lot of, you know, people, and they're doing the same things you're talking about. They're checking everything out, and you get to learn.
Learn, connect, build relationships.
Sight
Absolutely.
Unseen, I also want to mention. That's another show
That you like?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, no, I want to ask, has this been good for you, participating in these fairs?
Absolutely.
Wanted was amazing, and the response that we got was amazing, and the other designers that were in the launch pad with us were amazing and all lovely people, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, just being able to meet people face to face, you know, rather than it being something of introducing yourselves over email,
Right.
you know, is such a wonderful way. And you can invite people that are in New York to come to your booth, and then you get to see and talk to them face to face. It's just such a more personal way of reaching out and sharing your work with people. That it's really valuable for that reason.
Okay. So now we get to talk about your new product.
Great.
Because Kate was able to send me images of your new line, and we've already posted it on our blog site, State of the Arts, NYC on WordPress, so folks can go there. And I really like the new line. It's very clean.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot. People sometimes like to go to such lengths to make it over dramatic, but I always feel that simple is best. It says more, and it's clean, and I like the colors. And tell us, how did you come about with this new line?
Yeah.
You wanna start with the Sentinel?
Sure. Yeah, it was something since our first year when we launched. Like you say, we really wanted to challenge ourselves with pushing our vision and taking more risks and embracing everything, like you're saying, of keeping it clean and minimal, but still having a story behind it. And the Sentinel pieces really actually started as a sketch. And from my fine art background, I am always approaching things, thinking about composition and form and texture and material in a very elements of design way. And so it started out as a sketch of always being these three minimal, simple forms and how they were relating to each other in this triptych of forms that ended up having sort of a very almost figurative quality to them. And just playing with that composition is really what inspired them. And then once we had the lovely nature of working together is once one of us has a seed of an idea, then we can bring it to the other, and then it starts to take on the life of its own in a different way. And Chris started bringing in the ideas of the materials and how we can give it this very tactile experience with the materials that we used with it. So,
so how did you come up with the shapes and the colors?
The shapes grew out of that sketch.
Yeah,
okay.
It was these three kind of almost monk-like conical figures,
Mm-hmm.
and we sketched several configurations of how those three, large, medium, small, kind of these conical figures would relate to each other, and what kind of compositions you could get from placing them in different ways. So there were a number of sketches like that. so that's where the basic form of these tall cones, and then the globe, it was kind of something almost monk-like a monk carrying a globe or something like that.
And there's something that interests us and in particular, I think it's coming out in that piece that we're even trying to explore a bit more of finding these unexpected forms that at first might even feel a little strange in their unexpected quality, but still are something that you want to live with, that still have an elegant or beautiful quality to them, but have a little strangeness to them as well. And that combination is something that really interests us, and we want to even push even farther in the future.
Right. And so that out of that sketch, then we started talking about how to execute that, both in terms of just fabricating it, but then what kind of materials and what kind of detailing, and so out of that, this very clean brass line that runs up the cone. And
yes,
the
I
top
like
of
that.
The cone, and so it's this dark black, and it comes in. There are other options, but we prefer the black and brass.
And the material, the black.
Yeah,
what is that glass?
No, it's a micro suede.
Well,
the material
globe,
around it. Yes,
the globe is hand-blown
glass.
And then
the black
cone,
is a micro suede.
Yeah, is wrapped in a micro suede,
which is also another element we like, that very tactile quality it has, and using these authentic materials of brass and the suede that gives it a sense of a weight to it almost. Okay. So it feels a little grounding when you experience it.
And the suede, the people were coming up to the booth and they almost want to
touch it.
You're really drawn to the material, so you just want to.
Okay. No, this is great because it's sort of like this, you're using a variety of materials to create this sort of line. Now, when people ask about your lights, is it, or rather I should say, are you encouraging people to think of them in a set as opposed to just one piece, because you want people to experience something when they are in the midst of these, beautiful, lamps.
Right. That's, I think, where we have to sort of let go of our artist brain a little bit. It definitely was conceived as a group of three, and that's, sort of conceptually where we really are in love with them.
We wanted to see that.
Yeah.
That group of three together.
Right. But then there is something that we have to let go of and understand that this also might work as a single floor lamp, and this might be what serves you in your space.
Well, you know what it is today, what I like about design, different than before, because it was really for just very wealthy people who had lots of money. Nowadays, with 3D printing, and I know you don't do a lot of 3D printing, but still with 3D printing and the fact that people are using so many different mediums to create lights or to create furniture, you can really kind of help guide people in thinking about their space in a different sort of way. And now that we have different styles of apartments that are being pushed to the public, whether there's these, open spaces that share a living room and a kitchen dining area, or you have, these other sort of spaces with loft types of beds and to give you more space, you can really start to think. It's no different than with art. I tell people the same thing. Before, people were very afraid they still are, to buy art because they think it's going to be so expensive, but that's not true. You can start off with photography and build a collection from there. So I like what's happening with design. It's becoming much more accessible, much more friendly, and it gets to be about your personal style, and you can help guide people to think about their space. So do you get more people asking from a residential perspective or from a corporate? Because I could see your lamps being in a corporate space as well.
We've had to think about that. It's mostly residential, but one of the other new piece that we released, we had kind of commercial in mind because that's a market we want to
and because it's so versatile. The anaglyph light, the LED light, It's something that can be customized to any number of space settings, and so that can be so useful for a commercial setting.
Well, that's big nowadays anyway, because LED is very cost efficient. It lasts a long time, and so there's a lot you could do with LED lights.
Yeah, it's an amazing resource for sure. Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to share with our audience about your company, what you hope to do with it?
We're still growing and discovering what our unique voice and aesthetic is, and every year we try to push that and uncover that more and take risks, and we try to learn a new process or a new material. And this last collection that we did, these two pieces, are really moving us in that direction.
So it's exciting to keep looking forward and keep thinking about creating more and more objects in this world that we're starting to visualize and understand better ourselves.
And I do have to, add a little bit of, controversy, and that is the fact that New York City is so expensive. A lot of creative people are wondering whether they should stay or whether they should move. And how do you feel about that? Because it's amazing, as a city, but it's changing quite a bit. And it's not the same city from, how many of us, remember as kids. There's a lot of positive, and then there's some negative. But one of the concerns is that, the cost of living in this city, it's driving, creative professionals out. And it's just hard to present. It's hard to gain clients. I think these new design fairs are helping in that respect, so that you can build a clientele. But it is expensive. Has that impacted your practice at all?
Definitely.
And it's something that we grapple with and think about. It is expensive, and in some ways it's incredibly difficult to pull off a trade show, especially when you're just starting out. And we love the city, and we love all the opportunities it gives us, and we love being a part of the design world here.
It's a double-edged sword in many ways, because what keeps us doing here, it's a conversation we've had of, would this be easier to do outside of the city where it's cheaper to do everything that you want to do? But the community and the resources that you also have here is unbeatable. And so right now we're in the camp of it's worth it to be here, and we need to make it work and do what we can to make it work. But it's not easy. And the nice thing that is happening is that people in the community do come together then and support each other. And so these shared shops that are all over Brooklyn, and
also in Queens too.
Exactly. So that's what's helping to make it possible. But it is something that the city does need to keep in mind, because it's central to the livelihood of the city and the spirit of the city. But it's in many ways not easy to do.
That's the reason why I'm doing this show, because as most folks know, State of the Arts is about the behind the scenes aspect. Years ago, you had so many people in New York City that were makers. And there's this now disconnect with making things, not necessarily manufacturing, but production, and the final product. And so many Americans now have no connection to what it's like to make anything anymore. Right now, the garment district, and I've been a supporter of the garment district, they're struggling to survive. And it's because of costs, that's one. But then also we have a lot of, leaders who don't know what it's like either to make anything. So they come up with these ideas, and they think it sounds great on paper, but then they're not thinking about the practicality of it all. And I did want to, shift the conversation to talk about making in New York. You're saying that you share a space, and there's a community, And I think New Yorkers need to know that, and we need to start to bridge that gap where people, if they're not making, at least start to connect with makers. So therefore, there's a better connection between, final product and, the concept of it and what we buy at the end, because otherwise we're going to lose out. I mean, I think it's great that you can get, certain products, cheaply made, because you don't want everything to be so overly priced.
Right.
But at the same time, isn't it wonderful that you could get something that's well designed, well thought out, well made, right here in this country? So how do you guys feel about that?
Exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot. There's
Go ahead.
Just the idea of making, and that people don't know what that means, to make something, and how much time and effort and energy and upfront expense and all the things that go into that is a thing that I think a lot of people don't understand. But I think what's happening in New York, and like you were saying with the founding of Design Week and all of that, that part of the reason these brands that are becoming so big, that are based in New York, are becoming big, is because people want that connection. These are not products that are made overseas, and they're not mass manufactured. They're assembled and handmade and hand finished in New York, and people want to pay. They're willing to pay for that if they know a little bit of the story behind it.
Yes,
and they can go to the showroom and see, like, oh, this is made right here. And they're willing to pay for that, and that connection is something that is valuable, and it's part of why we kind of decided to do this. Is we want to make things, and we want the story of those things to be accessible to people and to be available.
And there's a growing value in building a livelihood from making, and those that might not be the makers are now understanding the value of having that in their homes, and it's exciting that's is a growing part of the economy that's.
Yeah, I think it needs to grow more, because I think for a long time Americans thought that we should get away from making things, that it was for poor people. Poor people made things. That wasn't true.
Right.
You had some wonderful people who were involved in architecture and the details that we'll never, ever see again. I mean, never. And we've lost that because of this false attitude that doing anything with your hands was not a very honorable thing to do.
Right.
Which I think is a story that was foisted upon us by people who don't know how to make things. They weren't good at something. They weren't good at making things, but they were good at doing other things that,
The pyramid gets flipped upside down.
The pyramid.
No, but
the makers are now at the bottom.
Yeah,
really
but
should be.
You know what I'm saying?
Top.
You know, your parents didn't want you to make any things. They wanted you to be a corporate executive,
right?
Or a doctor or a lawyer, because those were the professions that were well esteemed, and so therefore they wanted you to do that and stay away from making. So that means they didn't understand, nor did they value what they were doing, or at least didn't think it was valuable when it really was. And now, to get something beautifully made, like I bought this bowl last year at the Gowanus Art Open Studios.
Sure,
it was beautifully made.
Yeah.
It is on my table. I put fruit in it all the time. I love showing off this little bowl that was well made by somebody's hand.
Yeah.
And, it's like, how do we get people to reappreciate, craftsmanship? And you were also led to believe that if you made something, you were not a highly educated person.
Right.
That was the other false assumption, wouldn't you say? You want to talk about that just briefly?
I can't speak to that.
Yes, you can, because you do 3D modeling, and that's a very complex thing.
We're both lucky because both our parents we're not that way. They encourage us to make things, and our parents all are creative or artists in their own right, in their own ways, and so
that was our experience. But I think you're speaking to a longer trajectory over the ages of when it was exciting we could get things manufactured for us, that seeped into our culture so deeply.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think going even back to when Etsy came out, there was sort of this backlash of this craving things that we make with our hands. And so I think this is slowly turning around where people now want to make their own yogurt and want to make their...
the whole food industry has exploded.
Right,
but yeah, I just want
getting grounded back into the essence of making and where things come from, I think is...
that too.
Right, it was where we are culturally slowly getting back to.
I think it's about balance.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with something being mass-produced.
We're going to need that, yes.
But yes, because we are going to need that. But there's nothing wrong with also having something beautifully made and crafted. So I think it's having the balance.
Right.
But it's just dispelling the myth that when you make something with your own hands, it's done in an amateur way. No, it's not. I think it's the opposite.
Right.
And that's why I was saying about your 3D modeling. It's become very complicated now to reproduce a lot of things. And when I think of the 3D printer, it's really, it's like science fiction that has come home. I think of the replicator from Star Trek, where Captain Picard would say, Earl Grey tea, and it would just materialize. But that's really what a 3D printer is. It's a concept that you can computerize, put into a machine, and then it reproduces it for you.
Right.
So it's not just, that old-fashioned sort of making things. It's also very high-tech as well. And I think it's impacted the whole design industry, wouldn't you say, Chris?
It's just another, to me, it's just another tool. We use it to make shapes, to prototype things, to look at forms. We're not manufacturing anything.
No. But it's just the whole concept of using that as, like you said, a tool.
But it's still you still need to model or draw the thing that you're going to print, and that's something that kids today it's going to just come second nature to them. The way they're going to learn, they're already learning the 3D modeling in elementary school and learning how to 3D print things. So
I wouldn't say totally, but still, I think that old-fashioned way of learning how to draw is important, and having the patience to do it, and not instantly wanting it to happen. Right. Yeah. You want the combination of it all, the tool of digitalization, but also the old-fashioned way of doing things so that you can make sure aesthetically it's pleasing, for folks as well. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation today. I thought this went very well, talking about design, how evolved it's become, how it's, impacting so many people, and we get to enjoy it. So tell us again the name of your business, how people can find you online.
Great. It's Art and Guile.
And you can spell it out for us.
It's A-R-T, Art, and A-N-D, Guile, G-U-I-L-E. Art and Guile as our website. And on Instagram, we're at Art and Guile. And there you'll find our pieces there.
All right, then. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was great having Kate and Chris to talk with us about their company and about their practice and just the love that they have for doing this. So thank you very, very much.
This was really great. Yeah, thank you so much.
And so we are about to wrap this all up, and we will be talking with our audience again next week. So thank you so very, very much. And our audience can also check our social media pages. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on WordPress. We use the acronym SOTARTS NYC, State of the Arts NYC. Thank you so very, very much. This is your host, Savona Bailey-McClain. Have a great week. Bye-bye.